Welcome to Larry King Live. Tonight, Close Encounters of the Third Kind. Whitley Strieber says they're really out there, and they could be coming to get you. And life is but a dream. Dream reader Cook Giovanetti opens the hidden door to your soul. Now, here's Larry King.
Good evening on this Monday night, a beautiful night in Washington, D.C. We hope it's nice wherever you are. Welcome to another night, another week of Larry King Live. Later we'll meet Cook Giovanetti and we'll get into the subject of dream interpretation. Our first guest tonight is author of the runaway bestseller, Transformation, The Breakthrough. He is Whitley Strieber. There is the book. It is published by Beech Tree Books, a division of William Morrow, and it is a continuation of his enormous bestseller, Communion. A continuation how, Whitley?
Well, it's not really a continuation. What happened to me was, after I finally realized that this probably was real,
I found
in the sense that they were
another planet.
Well, people, something that was non-human, that was intelligent, and that seemed to be, I don't know, from another planet. I would guess so. Where else? I mean, but I turned toward it, and I started trying to challenge it, to get through my fear. And over a period of months, I formed a relationship with them that I believe could be a template almost for, almost as if they have one end of a phone and we've had two wires. Now, if we start trying to have this relationship, we'll have a phone too. Maybe.
So transformation is the story of contact.
It's the story of an attempt at a relationship with them. If they turn out to be real, as I think they are, then yeah, it is a story of contact.
Communion ended with what? That they had invaded you somehow? Or?
Well, it ended with a series of speculations, essentially, about whether or not they were a physical reality. And transformation starts with and goes through the process of how I discovered that they apparently are, which seems extraordinary to me even now, even as I talk to you. But it does seem to be the case in my...
How do you know you're not nuts?
Well, first of all, we were flooded with thousands of letters from people who, after Communion came out, from people who did not want public knowledge. They basically wanted to know if I could help them explain what had happened to them. And these stories, one after another, that had elements to them, generally unpublished elements to them, that suggested that this is much more than a dream, that there is something happening to people that's similar from case to case. Extraordinary.
And briefly, for the benefit of those who may not know, and of course, I guess the Strieber story is pretty well known, what happened to you initially?
Well,
by the way, Whitley Strieber wrote books like The Wolf and the Hunger, Wolf of Shadows, War Day, Nature's End, Wolf and an enormous bestseller. You were always into things different.
Well, yeah, I always have, and that is very true. It couldn't have happened, in a sense, to a more appropriate person, especially if it happens in the middle of the night. And
they found the right guy.
Well, they found a guy who was stubborn enough to try to deal with it.
And what happened to you?
Well, the first thing that I noticed about this was in December of 1985, right after Christmas, I was suddenly dragged out of my house by what appeared to be a bunch of small people, and ended up in a little room where they put a needle behind my ear and did other things to me. And
you realize, Whitley, that a lot of people are smiling.
Well, of course. Okay. Well, my reaction, I did not smile at the time. My reaction was, go to the doctor. Because obviously you have completely... Well, I didn't think... I thought I'd flip my wig. It was much more than just hallucinated. It was like a dream you could not wake up from. So the doctor smiled. I mean, you know, and I found that I have the funny psychosis, you know, and... however, over time, I began to study it more and more. I worked with a very wonderful UFO researcher named Bud Hopkins, and then with a fine doctor, Dr. Donald Klein. And I came out deciding I had not hallucinated, that something else had happened to me. Now, I have been with them a couple of times when I was not unconscious or in an altered state of mind, and I have staked my reputation on it. I think they're real, and I think that they are trying to find some way to communicate with us, and the gulf between us is very large.
They entered your body, is what you're saying?
No.
What was the injection all about?
The brain injection? I don't know. There are some scars in my brain that were found on an MRI scan that may be related to this. But we can't say that for sure. One of the things that the foundation I've started, the Communion Foundation, is going to be doing this year is studying other people who've had these apparent needle intrusions with the same type of MRI scan. And if we have a lot of cases where similar scars are seen, then we would say maybe it's suggestive of something.
Do you have any idea why you?
Maybe because I would talk about it. Another writer who is probably about as well known as I am told me that this happened to him back in the late 60s. Very similar. In fact, it happened to him over a 2-day period, not just a few minutes like it did with me. And he just never did anything about it because he didn't know quite what to do. I mean,
What do you tell us who it is?
I can't because he made me promise not to.
In transformation, what? You do communicate with them?
Well, I had one interaction with them where they said, what can we do to help you? And I told them the truth. I said, you could help me fear you less. And they said, we'll try, but it'll be very hard. And transformation is about what they did.
Now, when we say they said, they didn't say to you, don't worry.
They never said, don't worry. They never did anything to make it easy.
Can you tell us descriptively who they are? What do they look like?
They come in a couple of radically different configurations. Some of them are short and rather stocky, and others...
They have ears and noses and eyes?
I don't know. I haven't seen those clearly enough to be sure.
As images?
No, I see them as... When I've seen those people, they were like people in the room. I mean,
but you don't know if they have a nose or ears or eyes?
Well, it was dark, and they're a very dark color, a dark blue color, and you just can't... But there are others that are taller and more willowy, and I've seen them quite clearly, and I've had them painted for the covers of the 2 books. And they have very large eyes, some very black and some other colors, and quite triangular, thin faces. And I am talking to you about a real thing, I'm pretty sure.
When was the last time you visited?
January. What happened was that they woke us up with what was...
Were you writing the book already?
Was I writing this book then? Yeah, in fact, this isn't really told about in the book, except just sketchily, because it just happened when I was finishing this book. They woke us up, me and my wife, at about 10 of 6 in the morning with a loud noise that came like out of the air in the middle of our bedroom in our country house. And Ann said, they're here. And I looked at her and I felt terrified. I mean, I said, they are, you know. But I got my slippers and my robe on, and I went out into the woods behind the house. And I went about halfway down in the woods, and I could see in the meadow that's beyond the woods through the limbs, because it's winter, and you could see fairly clearly. Could see a big gray shape hanging there, and I could see movement around it. And finally, Larry, I could not go farther. I just didn't, they had worked with me on this fear, and I was not feeling very afraid, but I've got a family, and I don't know what this is exactly.
Our guest is Whitley Strieber. Are you happy you're not happy this happened to you?
Yeah, I am now.
You are? Our guest, Whitley Strieber, the new book is Transformation, the Breakthrough. You say it's not a curse.
Well, the derision and the people thinking I'm a psychotic is a curse. But the visitors are so interesting that, all I have to do is turn back to trying to work with the experience, and it's not a curse anymore.
It's not a language they communicate to you in?
It's spoken English. And there's been a lot of things that were sort of like almost dramatic kind of expositions that weren't in any language at all. They're kind of complicated. I can't describe one in a short period of time, but...
let's go back. If this could be 1983, 84, and Whitley Strieber's watching television, and Jonathan Winters is on.
Yeah.
And Jonathan Winters, one of his favorite bits is about UFOs. And they always seem to visit a farmer in Wyoming.
Right.
They never visit the White House. They never visit the governor of New York. They never go to Los Angeles. Yeah. They're always in Laramie, 60 miles outside of Laramie. And the farmer is always saying, me and the wife, we got woken up, and they were little people, and they took us on this ship, and we went up on this trip, and they were crazy. Now, you'd have laughed.
I would have definitely laughed. And yet I know a reason. I think I know the reason for the secrecy now, and it's a very good reason, a very intelligent one. And that is this, that as long as our social institutions don't get involved, in the sense that they don't have a physical artifact in the public domain, it means that each individual is able to deal with this in whatever way. If you want to turn away from it, laugh at it, ignore it, think it was a dream, or go for it. You can do anything you want.
But wouldn't you, as an intelligent person, say, let's say it's happening to you.
Yeah.
Why don't you go visit Carl Sagan, Ronald Reagan, Michael Dukakis, George Bush, Mikhail Gorbachev?
Well,
why me?
If they had, none of those guys could say a word about it.
I think one of them might. Carl Sagan might. You see, that's
Carl Sagan, I will agree with you. He might say something about it if it happened to him. I can only say that slowly, by inches, they seem to be getting closer to us, and maybe that's in the future.
Did they tell you why you?
Yeah. Well,
I would have asked.
I did, and the answer was because it was time.
Okay. You're not frightened now?
Not really, but I'm quite wary. I mean, they're around.
What are some things they've told you that would interest us?
Well, I had a conversation that lasted for about a half a minute at one time, or maybe a minute. And one of the most interesting things they said is, I asked them where they were from, and they said everywhere, so we shifted to what's the Earth? I mean, on the theory that they weren't going to tell me much about themselves. And the answer was interesting. The answer was, it's a school, which actually tallies in with most of our own religious traditions all over the world in a funny way.
The people calling you, giving you experiences.
Yeah.
Don't you think some of them are whacked?
Some of them are whacked, but what's interesting is that most of them aren't, and that's not what you would have expected. Most of the letters we've gotten are from articulate people. They are not from the farmer with a barn full of empty beer cans. They are from the farmer who knows how to make his farm work and is an educated guy and has written me a 6-page letter that starts out, "You must not allow anyone ever to see this letter. And I want to tell you what happened to me," because he wants to get it off his chest. And then he closes with, what does this all mean? And my wife is the person who responds to most of these letters, and she's in correspondence with over 1,000 people now. In each case, responding.
She has seen all this, too.
She's read all of it. She hasn't seen much of the visitors, but she's become absolutely convinced from what she has seen that they're real, and plus these letters.
Would you gather they're here now?
On the Earth, you mean? I don't really know where they stay, kind of. I mean, I've wondered about
Or how they're transported here?
Not really. I mean, there are some extraordinary pictures that have been nearly confirmed as real from a case in Gulf Breeze, Florida, that would suggest they come in ships.
You've taken light